Welcome to the Monsters Among Us podcast. This is Season 2, Episode 22, The Exeter Incident.
Great topic today. We're diving into a really classic case, 1965. This one actually hit the national headlines in a big way.
It really did. And importantly, it brought in the U.S. Air Force's official UFO research program, Project Blue Book. That official angle is key here.
Definitely. You had these very credible witnesses, a local teenager, two police officers describing something truly bizarre.
Right. And then you have the official investigation trying to make sense of it. So what we want to do in this deep dive is look at those accounts, what they actually saw and felt.
Yeah, lay out their testimony. And then compare that directly with the explanations offered by the Air Force, by Project Blue Book.
Because that contrast is, well, it's pretty stark, isn't it? Between what these guys swore they saw and what the official line became.
It absolutely is. That's why Exeter is like a cornerstone case for anyone studying this stuff. It's well documented, lots of publicity, credible people involved.
Okay, let's set the scene. We're talking very early morning, September 3rd, 1965, like 2 a.m.
Yep, Kensington, New Hampshire. It's near Exeter, pretty rural area, especially back then.
And our first witness is Norman Muscarello. He's 18 years old.
Just graduated high school, actually. And he was literally just weeks away from joining the Navy. So, a young guy with his future mapped out.
And he's hitchhiking home, a common thing back then.
Right.
Down Route 150.
Exactly. Middle of the night, dark road. He's just walking along, and then he sees these lights.
5 bright red flashing lights hovering.
Yeah, hovering. And at first, your mind tries to make sense of it. Is it a helicopter? Emergency vehicle, maybe? Something ordinary.
But as he gets closer, that falls apart.
Yeah.
Because these lights, they weren't on the road. They were up above the trees.
Maybe 100 feet up or so. And they weren't just points of light. They were casting this, brilliant red glow. Lit up a whole field, even nearby houses, the dining farm, the Russell farm.
And the object itself, his estimate was huge, like 80 or 90 feet across.
Massive. And the kicker, completely silent. No engine noise, no hum, nothing.
That silence is often a key feature in these reports, isn't it? Adds to the weirdness.
Totally. Imagine seeing something that big just hanging there, making no sound at all.
Yeah.
And then it starts moving.
Towards him.
Directly towards him.
Okay, yeah, I'd be terrified. His reaction makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. He just dove straight into a ditch beside the road. Pure instinct, just trying to hide.
Get out of sight.
While he's down there, the object kind of drifts, moves over one of the farmhouses, the dining place.
He sees his chance.
Right. He scrambled out of the ditch and just sprinted towards the other house, the Russells' place, pounding on the door, yelling for help.
And the people inside, the Russells, they later said they heard him.
Yeah, they heard him. But they were too scared by whatever was going on outside to open the door.
Wow, that says something, doesn't it? The level of fear that thing generated, they wouldn't even help someone banging on their door.
It really does. It paints a picture of just how unsettling this whole event was. So no help there. Norman sees headlights coming down the road.
Flags down the car.
Yep. Couple inside, see he's obviously distressed. Give him a ride straight to the Exeter police station.
And that's where Officer Reginald Toland comes in.
Toland knew Norman, knew him as a local kid, and he was immediately struck by Norman's condition.
Not just telling a story, but physically affected.
Exactly. Pale, shaking, genuinely agitated. Toland said later he was really impressed by how real Norman's fear seemed. This wasn't some prank.
And then Toland connects this to something else that happened earlier that night.
Right. He'd been on the radio with another officer, Eugene Bertrand Jr. Bertrand had dealt with this woman earlier who was absolutely frantic.
Said she'd been followed.
Yeah, followed by a huge object with flashing red lights. Bertrand kind of thought, maybe she was a bit unreliable. He used the word cook, actually.
But now here's Norman, stable kid, about to join the Navy, clearly traumatized, telling almost the exact same story.
Suddenly, it wasn't just one potentially unreliable report. It clicked for Bertrand. Maybe there was something to this. He decided they needed to go back out there.
So Bertrand takes Muscarello in his patrol car, heads back towards the area near the farms where Norman saw the object.
They get there, get out of the car. At first, nothing seems out of the ordinary, just a quiet night.
But then they start walking towards the woods, into the field.
And the animals start reacting. This part is really eerie.
Little horses nearby.
Yeah, in a corral. They just went nuts, neighing, kicking the fences, slamming against the barn, total panic. And dogs in the area started barking like crazy, howling.
It's like the animals knew something was wrong before the humans even saw it again.
That's exactly how it felt. And then it appeared, slowly rising up from behind the trees just beyond the corral.
And Bertrand saw it clearly this time.
Oh yeah, his description. This huge dark object as big as a barn over there, with red flashing lights on it. Silent. Moving towards them. Swaying slightly.
Okay, even for a trained police officer, that's got to be alarming.
Definitely. Bertrand's training kicked in, though. He drops to one knee, draws his service revolver.
Aims it at the thing.
Or second, but then, reality check. What's a .38 gonna do against that? He holstered it,
Smart move.
grabbed Norman, and they basically booked it back to the patrol car.
Safer ground. And he radios for backup.
Yeah, calls Officer David Hunt, says, get out here.
While they're waiting, they're still watching it from the car.
Yep. The object is just hovering, maybe 100 feet away, 100 feet up, still rocking back and forth.
And the lights?
Those red lights were pulsing fast. Bertrand described the sequence, right to left, then left to right, really quick cycle, maybe 2 seconds total. And the animals, still agitated the whole time.
Then Officer Hunt arrives.
And Hunt sees it too, so now you've got Muscarello, Officer Bertrand, and Officer Hunt all witnessing the same phenomenon.
3 credible people, 2 of them police officers. That's significant.
Hugely significant. They watched it for a bit longer, and then the object just ascended, went straight up over the trees, and disappeared.
And Hunt made an important comparison afterwards, didn't he?
He did. A little while later, a B-47 bomber flew over, likely from Pease Air Force Base nearby. Hunt was very clear. You could hear the bomber perfectly well, the object they saw, silent.
He said you could tell the difference. There was no comparison.
Exactly. These guys knew what planes looked and sounded like. This wasn't a plane.
So they head straight back to the station.
All 3 of them. And they immediately filed separate, detailed reports, taking it very, very seriously.
And that's when the story really breaks out, right? Goes from a local police matter to national news.
Absolutely. Having 2 police officers confirming the sighting, alongside Muscarello, gave it instant credibility. The press picked it up fast.
That's led to journalist John G. Fuller getting involved.
Yeah, Fuller was a respected writer, columnist for the Saturday Review. He came to Exeter specifically to investigate this incident thoroughly.
And he didn't just talk to Muscarello, Bertrand, and Hunt.
No, he dug deeper. He talked to other people in the Exeter area who'd seen strange things around that time, too. He wanted to see if this was isolated or part of something bigger.
Did he find other reports?
He did. Like Ron Smith, a high school kid. His mom, and his aunt saw something a couple of weeks after the main incident. Described an object, red light on top, glowing white bottom, seemed to spin, stopped dead in the air.
Huh. Similar elements. Spinning, stopping.
And Officer Tolan, back at the station, told Fuller they were getting lots of calls. He mentioned one from a Mrs. Lindsay who called while she and her kids were watching this large orange ball, almost as big as the harvest moon, from their window.
So Fuller's work suggested this wasn't just a one-off event on September 3rd. There was a pattern of sightings in the area.
Exactly. It added a lot more weight to the whole thing, made it harder to dismiss.
With all this attention and police involvement, the local police chief reached out to the military.
Yeah, he contacted Pease Air Force Base, which was nearby.
Yeah.
Said, hey, we've got something serious here.
And the Air Force sent investigators.
They did. Major David Griffin and Lieutenant Alan Brandt came down to interview the main witnesses. Muscarello, Bertrand, Hunt.
There was something about them asking the witnesses not to talk to the press.
Yeah, apparently they asked them to keep quiet, but the cat was already out of the bag. The Manchester Union leader had already run the story.
So Major Griffin does his interviews, collects information.
And sends his report up the chain, specifically to Major Hector Quintanilla, who was running Project Blue Book at the time.
Project Blue Book, the official Air Force program for UFO reports. This is where the official investigation really kicks in.
Right. And Griffin's initial report is actually pretty interesting.
What'd he say?
He basically said he couldn't figure it out. His words were unable to arrive at a probable cause.
So the guy on the ground couldn't explain it.
Nope. And he explicitly mentioned the witnesses, especially the patrolmen, seemed stable, reliable persons. He found nothing in the area that could explain it.
Yeah.
He even noted B-47s were around, but said he didn't think they were related to the sighting.
That's a crucial point. The initial military investigator couldn't debunk it and found the witnesses credible.
Exactly. But then the public statements started coming out from the higher-ups, from the Pentagon and Project Blue Book.
And they had a different take.
Oh, yeah. The first explanation floated by the Pentagon to the press was, well, pretty weak, honestly.
What was it?
They said the men probably saw nothing more than stars and planets twinkling, because of a temperature inversion?
Twinkling stars. For something described as 90 feet wide, hovering low, lighting up the ground.
Doesn't quite fit, does it?
Mm-hmm.
A temperature inversion can cause weird atmospheric effects, make lights twinkle or distort, but
It doesn't sound like what Bertrand, Hunt, and Muscarello described at all.
not even close. Then Quintanilla and Project Blue Book offered their official analysis. They suggested maybe it was Operation Big Glass.
A military exercise.
Yeah, some kind of training mission that was happening in the region. Or, alternatively, maybe it was just those 5 B-47 bombers that Major Griffin had mentioned were in the area.
So they're basically saying, you guys probably just saw some military planes and got confused.
That was the gist. Quintanilla even wrote to Bertrand and Hunt, basically saying, look, if you happen to notice these military aircraft, maybe that was what you saw.
How did the officers react to that?
They were not happy. They strongly disagreed. Vehemently.
They didn't just say no, did they?
No, Bertrand and Hunt actually wrote formal letters back to Project Blue Book. They laid out exactly why those explanations didn't work, point by point.
Okay, what were their main objections?
Well, first, the proximity. They saw it close up, remember? Close enough for Bertrand to draw his weapon initially. This wasn't some distant light.
Right, not twinkling stars.
Second, the weather. They checked. They said it was a perfectly clear night, no wind, no inversion. So that theory was out.
What else?
The silence. They stressed again, absolutely silent, no jet engines, no rotors. It had no wings, no tail. It was a definite object, dark, huge, casting that bright red light everywhere.
And the timing regarding Operation Big Blast.
That was a killer point. They stated their sighting happened almost a full hour after Operation Big Blast was supposed to have finished.
So the timelines didn't even match up.
Nope. Their detailed professional observations just didn't align with the explanations being pushed by Blue Book.
And it wasn't just the main witnesses pushing back, right? Fuller, the journalist, others.
Absolutely. John Fuller wrote about the inconsistencies. Raymond Fowler, who investigated for ENICAP, that was a big civilian UFO group back then, he did his own investigation and concluded the Air Force explanations were just wrong.
Didn't someone from the Air Force try to, demonstrate it was base lights or something?
Yeah, there's a story about an officer trying to show a crowd that lights from Pease AFB could look like the UFO. Apparently, it looked nothing like it and was pretty embarrassing.
So, lots of pushback, credible witnesses sticking to their guns.
Mm-hmm.
Did it have any effect on the official stance?
It seems like it might have, because months later, in January '66, a Lieutenant Colonel Spaulding from the Secretary of the Air Force's office sent another letter.
What did this one say?
This one was different. He basically said, based on additional information, we have been unable to identify the object you observed on September 3rd, 1965.
Unable to identify. That's a big change from twinkling stars or military planes.
It's a huge shift. It's the Air Force officially saying, okay, after looking at everything again, we can't explain this conventionally. That unidentified status from Project Blue Book itself is really what cemented Exeter's place in UFO history.
They investigated, they tried to explain it, and in the end, they couldn't pin it down.
Exactly. And John Fuller's book, Incident at Exeter, became a huge bestseller. That really brought the story to a massive audience.
And the witnesses, they stuck by their stories.
For their entire lives. Norman Muscarello always insisted it was real, right up until he died in 2003. Officers Bertrand and Hunt also maintained their accounts consistently until they passed away. Their steadfastness is a big part of the case's legacy.
You mentioned the town even has a festival now.
Yeah, the Exeter UFO Festival. It kind of embraces the history, raises money for local causes. It's part of the town's identity now.
Now, decades later, there have been attempts to offer maybe more skeptical explanations.
Right. As often happens with these famous cases. In 2011, Joe Nickel and James Magaha published an article in Skeptical Inquirer.
What was their theory?
Magaha was ex-Air Force, had experience with air refueling. They proposed the object might have been a KC-97 tanker plane, also operating out of Pease.
Okay, how did they connect that to the sighting?
They pointed out KC-97s had these 5 bright red lights under the fuselage used for refueling operations. They claimed these lights flashed in a specific sequence, 1 to 5 and back down, which they thought could match the witness's description of flashing lights.
And the movement, the swaying.
They suggested the refueling boom hanging underneath the tanker might flutter in the air, potentially explaining Mascrello's comment about it floating like a leaf.
So trying to fit the details to a known aircraft.
Exactly. It's a retrospective attempt to find a conventional answer. It's a possible explanation put forward.
But you have to weigh that against the original testimony.
All right. You do. You have to remember the officers especially were adamant. Silent, no wings, lit up the ground, unlike any aircraft they knew, including the B-47 they heard distinctly moments later. And of course, the Air Force's own final conclusion was unable to identify.
It really leaves you thinking. You've got these solid-seeming witnesses, their accounts are consistent.
Then you have the official investigation, which initially offers explanations that just don't seem to fit the facts reported by the witnesses.
And finally settles on, we don't know.
Right. And then much later, you get these alternative theories trying to resolve it conventionally.
So the question really becomes, what does it mean when the official investigators, the ones tasked with figuring this out, end up saying they're unable to identify something seen so clearly by multiple reliable people? Does a later theory fully satisfy that initial puzzle?
That's the core of the Exeter incident, I think. That tension between compelling firsthand accounts and the struggle for a definitive explanation, official or otherwise, it keeps the debate alive.
That is the end of this episode. Until next time. Keep to the shadows. Some legends are best left undiscovered.